Counting 7 members present, Parker, Allen, Benedict, Evans, Siegel, Ewing, Hill, Horton, and Spain. Did I miss any members that are present? And I see a couple of other council members who are not on the committee have joined us. Thank y'all for being here for this presentation. So we do have a quorum, and we're going to get going here in just a second. We will see if I can figure out how to turn the clerk microphones on for our guests. So we're going to begin with the presentation from some of our NDOT staff. I'll allow them to introduce themselves, give you their titles, and they will be presenting on Vision Zero walk and bike and how we prioritize street projects. Could we do a mic check, y'all?
Mic check.
That one's working. Ms. Dearman? Okay.
There's no green. Okay, working?
We are in business. Okay. Well, do y'all have control of the slide deck and all that, and you're good to go? All right. Thank you so much. If you would just introduce yourselves and take it away for us, please.
Hi, I'm Anna Dearman, walking and biking manager at NDOT.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Guneet Sani, and I'm Vision Zero coordinator with NDOT.
And then I am Matt Purvis, the council liaison to NDOT.
I'll start with the presentation on Vision Zero. I'm honored to be here today and to present on Vision Zero of Nashville, a vision of zero fatalities and serious injuries on our roads. The vision is derived from a simple answer, if you could, in your hearts, answer how many of your friends, family, relatives do you want to die on the road today? Not even a single one, no one. And that's the vision. That's NDOT's vision. That's all what NDOT staff and all Metro is currently working towards. This is far from the traditional approach that we used to think that the way to improve road safety is to reduce the number of crashes. Because if we are reducing the number of crashes, there is still going to be some acceptable number of deaths. And it's not zero. So the only acceptable number of people dying on our roads, or the only number of lives that are changed every year that is acceptable because of a terribly changed, is zero. In the last 5 years, 568 people lost their lives in fatal and serious injury crashes on local roads in Nashville. With that number, if a flight was to carry 100 passengers or over 100 passengers was to crash in Nashville every single year, what would that do? What would that make us do? That will require a major change in the aviation industry, and we will all advocate for it. This Vision Zero is that exact change that we are advocating for right now and working on to get to. Vision Zero program recognizes that deaths and serious injuries are unacceptable. When there is a plane collision, we call it a crash. When there is a vehicle collision, we call it an accident. It's preventable. It's not an accident. It is random, but it's preventable. So traffic deaths and serious injuries are preventable and unacceptable. Human life and safety takes priority over everything. Accounting for human errors, a system made for not accounting for human errors is not a system made for humans. We need to manage the traffic speed, reflect the community needs, data-driven and transparent transportation system, an urgency, a sense of urgency, and an integrated approach. A connected network, a connected community is what we are working towards in this vision and in this program. Last year, in August 2022, Metro Council overwhelmingly accepted the Vision Zero Action and Implementation Plan and supported the efforts to eliminate road fatalities and serious injuries. In Vision Zero, in these plans, we went ahead and identified the streets that had high concentration of traffic collisions that resulted in fatalities and serious injuries. And that was 6% of our streets accounted for 60% of our crashes. And looking more into it, the vulnerable population identified by GNRC was overrepresented in this network. So to guide Nashville's investments and infrastructure programs, we ensured that Vision Zero projects are supporting those in need. So we combined the Vision Zero, the vulnerable users, vulnerable areas, traffic deaths, and serious injuries all together to make this network, to understand where the need is, and to divert all the investment in transportation infrastructure and program. The Vision Zero, the science behind Vision Zero is redundancy. So the safe systems approach is an approach to make the whole system safe altogether by making it redundant. Safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, post-crash care, safe vehicles, all together make up a safe system. And that's the premise behind Vision Zero. The 5 E's framework is how we are taking action in Vision Zero. Engineering, encouragement and education, enforcement, evaluation. Going more into these 5 E's of Vision Zero is engineering, quick build projects, capital projects, and transformative projects. The difference is what we can do in that time frame. So when the time frame is small, we want to do immediately is the quick build projects such as pedestrian refuge islands, curb extensions, restriping, bike lanes, LPIs. When we have to do a major project, the capital level projects, that's the intersection improvements, that requires more analysis and data and efforts, filling in sidewalk gaps, those are under capital projects, and then the transformative projects to make the system so that the whole system is not for the vehicles, but for people is where we need the transformative projects. The education and encouragement. A connected community is a safe and healthy community. And that's why education and encouragement is an important piece of Vision Zero. So education, campaigns, awareness campaigns, PSAs, social media, community engagement events, safe routes to school program, enforcement, where targeted enforcement of speed, so no one's speeding in school zones. No kid has to die on our roads. No kid has to be seriously injured on our roads. Evaluation for the accountability of this whole program. We need evaluation. And for that, we have a residents advisory committee, which helps us inform on all the decisions that we make regarding Vision Zero program. Fatal crash investigation team goes on all the fatal crashes that are happening every day and looks at into the network, what improvements can be done. Vision Zero report card, implementation plan update, and dashboard for transparency are in the pipeline. All of these efforts all together are under Vision Zero, and the entire department is working on this same vision of zero fatalities and serious injuries in Nashville. Thank you.
Thanks, Ganeet. So now I'm going to talk about our walk and bike strategic plan for sidewalks and bikeways in Nashville. This plan has predated the Vision Zero plan, actually. So the walk and bike plan has existed in some form for decades now. As a strategic plan, Walk and Bike identifies not only the lines on the map of where sidewalks and bikeways should go, but also factors in priority and feasibility. The 2022 Walk and Bike update responded to a charge from former Mayor Cooper to deliver projects 50% faster and at 20% lower cost. With the plan update, we reviewed the entire life cycle of project delivery from policy to construction in order to optimize the process. For the 2022 Walk and Bike update, we connected with thousands of stakeholders around our community using the full suite of engagement tools. This engagement shaped the way that we scored segments of our transportation network to determine which projects we would advance over the next 3 years. These prioritization of factors include safety or crash history, connectivity or filling a gap in the existing network, access to transit or proximity to transit stops, and health and equity, locations where some of our most vulnerable community members live. This is what those critical needs areas look like on the map. This is the sidewalk critical needs areas, and these are the bikeway critical needs areas. We then took into account constructability or feasibility factors to balance out a viable 3-year work plan that we could advance through 2024 and meet our target of delivering projects faster and at lower cost. These lists are available on the project website, walkinbike.nashville.gov, where you can also follow project status on the interactive trackers linked on the website. By the numbers, here is how we're tracking on our work plan and our 50-20 goal. I actually have updated numbers from this morning. So we're actually tracking at 18% lower cost to date. We have 7.7 miles of sidewalks under construction, and we have 18.7 miles of sidewalks in design. Again, here is the link to the project website where you can track the status of bikeway and sidewalk design and construction. Thank you, and I think we'll take questions now.
Councilmember Allen, I saw you first, and then I saw Councilmember Horton. You are recognized, Councilmember
Thank you very
Allen.
much. And it's good to see you again. Thank you for walking and biking in front of everybody everywhere. On the connectivity, we used to have the old pedestrian generator index or something like that, and it talked about things like schools and parks and libraries and stuff like that. So it may have been there, but the print was a little small. Can you talk about what connectivity includes?
Yes, great point. So I should clarify, in previous updates to the walk-in bike plan or to the sidewalk and bikeway strategic plan, we had identified a priority bikeway network and a priority sidewalk network. And we didn't do away with that priority network with the 2022 update. We simply reordered the projects that we were going to advance first. And so all of those sort of land use or activity generator considerations were not lost. However, we did factor in safety, so the crash history, just as a way of prioritizing which projects we do first.
Thanks. I've got Councilmember Horton next. You are recognized. Whoops, sorry, I just doubled. There we go.
Hello.
You're recognized. Yes.
Thank you each for coming here today. I have two quick questions. One, do you have a sense of the relative cost effectiveness of each of, I think you called them the 5 E's? For example, if our goal is to reduce traffic deaths, is $1 spent on enforcement more or less effective than spending it on engineering or some other purpose?
Yes, so basically when we go implement something, we have multiple options of implementing different types of countermeasures. Some are more effective than the other. Some of them we take directly as proven safety countermeasures from the FHWA, which is Federal Highway Safety Administration. So they have a whole guidebook, and we have a lot of materials to directly do it without doing the benefit cost analysis, because those are proven countermeasures and they have already been proven high benefit to cost ratios. However, when we go forward and we always, when in the planning stages of the project, we identify different options of countermeasures. And in those different options, we do the benefit cost analysis as how much it will cost to the benefit. Benefit comes out to number of fatalities and serious injuries and other crashes, and there is a number associated to every fatality. Currently, according to the federal standard, it's 1.5 million approximately. So, and so on for the serious injuries. So that's how we do the benefit cost analysis, and we come up with which countermeasure we will be implementing for a particular site. That's the process behind the different countermeasures. Some of them are proven and high benefit cost ratio, which we do not go through that process, and we directly implement through cook-build projects. Mostly for the capital projects, we do a lot more analysis, and that's why it takes longer in time for that analysis.
Got it. Thank you. One other quick question is, as far as the criteria used to select areas for priority for walkways or bikeways, is there the ability to introduce considerations perhaps not directly related to like pedestrian fatalities? I'm thinking, at least in my district, one way we were thinking about how to embed our public schools more closely in the communities if people could walk to school. But at least in my district, very few students actually do walk to school despite living in close proximity to it because of this perceived danger to it of doing so. So there's not a lot of foot traffic there currently such that might justify traffic calming or bikeways or something like that. But I think if it was safe, there would be significant foot traffic and would also serve other priorities like, trying to make our public schools more embedded in the community.
Yeah, great question. And I'll answer from an infrastructure perspective, and then I'll let Guneet talk about our Safe Routes to School program, which is a component of Vision Zero. So definitely we want to take a proactive approach and not simply be reactive to crashes. And so for that reason, we try to take advantage of an array of opportunities to implement sidewalks and bikeways. So we will implement sidewalks and bikeways that aren't on these lists. In some cases, that's streets that are up for repaving, where we have a planned bikeway, or this street makes a good alternative to a street where the bikeway is less feasible. Our traffic calming program too provides opportunity for us to sort of collaborate on that project. Once it's been implemented, once we can demonstrate that it's been successful in changing the conditions on the street, we can then perhaps go in and implement a shared bikeway or calm the street so that people feel comfortable walking and biking on the street. So I would say it definitely doesn't have to be on the list for us to identify opportunities to advance the project. Do you want to talk about the Safe Routes program?
Yes. So for first of all, the streets which have there might be a lot of near misses that that is not fatality and could be a fatality or could be a fatality in the coming years. So for accounting for that, we conduct safety audits on a lot of these roads, and especially under Safe Routes to School program, that's a very proactive program that NDOT has under Vision Zero. And that program is to look at all the areas, all the streets which are connected to the school where the students or the parents or guardians could be walking towards the school or out of the school, and and what are the safety deficiencies of the whole network. It does not matter if there is a crash or not. It is important to analyze the network as a whole, and that's why I spoke about the systemic safety, the safe systems approach. There does not need to be a crash for a roadway to be unsafe, and we acknowledge that. And that's how we work on Vision Zero, is to look at the roadway with the safety through a safety audit and conduct all the assessments, and then finally plan the future projects.
Thank you very much.
All right, next I saw Councilmember Benedict. Councilmember Benedict, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here today. A couple of questions. One on the education front. I know that we don't offer driver's education statewide. That's something, though, I'm wondering citywide. Is that something we could do within MNPS? Has that been explored, rather? I don't know as far as, it's a question for legal, whether we can or can't in those requirements, but is that something that's being explored as a part of the education piece?
I'll take this question. So it has been acknowledged as an intervention federally for policy perspectives. This is not been included in the implementation plan, however, because of several restrictions as we do not know of. So this is something that we would definitely note it down and look further into it.
That'd be great. And if there's anything legislatively that we could do or funding to the school board or, to schools, I think that's something this council would certainly love to look at. Then could you go back to the map? Either one of the maps. So, yeah, that one's a good one because that one shows District 7 has like almost nothing. And so and I know that that's right. So Councilmanic, we're like, what about mine? I get calls, as we all do every day, that streets are dangerous. We need sidewalks. We need traffic calming. What are we doing up here in this district, Emily? How can you deliver more? And when I look at a map like this, it shows, hey, the need is in downtown and the urban core, right? Much more so. And I would say District 7 is part of the urban core, but it's more suburban, certainly in North Inglewood than in other areas. Having said that, we continue to see this focus on around the needs downtown. I understand the criteria, but is it just that? Can you help me understand why the need is so much greater there than in areas like, I know Dickerson Pike, for instance, I see it on the map, and I know that that's a very dangerous street for pedestrians, right? But I also see so much south of town. Do we simply not have the infrastructure in those places, and the danger is so much greater? Again, trying to go back to that narrative of why is downtown getting everything, right, when everybody around the county needs improvements?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that question. I mean, certainly Connect Downtown is a project to investigate that. The Connect Downtown has a lot of these features. We see crashes. Many streets in downtown are on our high injury network. Obviously, transit, the hub for transit is downtown. There are a lot of transit stops downtown. A lot of places that people with disabilities are trying to access are downtown. And so it does meet a lot of these factors. Our vulnerable populations are located around downtown. Obviously, that's quite dispersed throughout the county. We are trying to address, in this case, especially with safety, given scarce resources, the most sort of urgent, acute needs. Because we're not to a point yet where we can fully be proactive around building sidewalks and bikeways in order to prevent crashes. We still have this history of having to address the crashes that already exist. I will say too, one caveat to these maps, and it's not that these routes aren't scored, but a lot of our most dangerous roadways are state-owned roadways, and that's reflected in the high injury network. When we try to implement bikeways and sidewalks on those streets, it's just an added layer of complexity to try to get that implemented. So we are building 4 miles of delineator protected bikeways on Lebanon Pike right now with TDOT repaving, but that is less than we can do on our local streets. And so we do have that kind of barrier that we're trying to overcome with our state routes.
Very helpful. I guess a follow-up question. So in thinking about, again, the questions that we get, and sometimes, I mean, just the perception, right? So battling the perception of what's happening. Downtown, we have a tourist population, right? And Vision Zero is inclusive of anybody in Davidson County, right? Anybody worldwide, right? But when we look at Nashvillians and the dangers that we face in our neighborhoods as compared to potentially how can downtown pay for downtown itself, right? And how can my tax dollars out in District 7 pay for the safety that I need out in District 7? Do we have any data going towards, and I know there was a pedestrian fatality in the Opryland area a couple of years ago. I mean, it's not acceptable for anyone to die or be injured as a result of dangerous streets. I've said it for many years. No one should be put in harm's way due to unsafe and unwalkable streets. I've said for 5 years. Do we have any data about visitors versus residents and those acts? Wow. Hey, I hear myself. I guess you get what I'm getting at. Is there any data? On the one hand, it's neither here nor there because, again, I don't want anybody injured, but I think, I answer to Nashvillians more so than the tourists.
Yeah, so data around, are the people involved in crashes, like what's their zip code, for example?
Exactly.
Sometimes we have that information and sometimes we don't. We also know that crashes in general are underreported, especially when it's someone walking or biking and maybe it doesn't result in, a police report, but the person may go to the hospital kind of thing. And so we're trying to improve our data collection around that. Thankfully, there are some examples already in Tennessee where we have done a better job of kind of just diving into that data and better understanding where people are coming from, what's the nature of their crash, using those hospital records. So that's something that we're investigating as part of our program.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair. Sorry I took a little extra time.
It's quite all right. Thank you for the questions. I've got Councilmember Ewing next, and then I see Councilmember Gamble. Let me find Councilmember Ewing. You're recognized.
Okay, so I raised my hand for this question before you started mentioning state routes, but it does pertain to that. As you may know, we had a fatality, several weeks ago, of a young woman who was riding her bike down Highway 100. which is a state route. I wanted to drill down a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind, into what the process is collaborating with the state. How does that work? How can council help in making that relationship work better? Are there ways that we can engage that, as a new council member, I would love to know what ways I can engage, and how the process goes to try and elevate the issues on those routes when there are fatalities.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I'm sorry for that fatality. I'm sorry for that experience that the people of your district and this entire community have had. We coordinate with TDOT staff on a regular basis. And so I think the staff level coordination is positive, and we have done things with that. We installed a safety improvement, a quick build safety improvement on Dickerson Pike at Grizzard Avenue. And so I think we can be nimble with our state agency. I do think that what we've talked about more recently when it comes to a corridor like Dickerson Pike, and there's a lot of attention and a lot of effort already invested in Dickerson Pike. Walk Bike Nashville did a study on Dickerson Pike. TDOT is working on a pedestrian safety plan for Dickerson Pike. We're building sidewalk on Dickerson Pike. We have multiple Vision Zero safety projects on Dickerson Pike. We've sort of discussed recently the need to develop a unified sort of metro perspective on the corridor, and then to have leadership present that to TDOT and have folks at the leadership level really coordinate on that. I think, we have a major and collector street plan that when TDOT goes to make changes to the roadway, they don't necessarily incorporate that planned facility. If it calls for bike lanes and they're repaving, they wouldn't necessarily take it upon themselves to meet that vision. And so I think for us to get really clear on our vision, and then for people at the leadership level to help communicate that and get on the same page around that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll go to Councilmember Gamble next. You are recognized.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me as I'm not on this committee. I appreciate you all for being here as well to talk about this very important topic. And my questions are kind of follow-ups to Councilmember Benedict. Looking at the map, I see a small area north of the I-65-24 split, which looks like Madison area, which is an area that we're looking at increasing housing stock, but there is a critical need for infrastructure, but I only see that area. So I'm wondering, two questions, and I may have missed this, so I apologize. Do you have a dollar amount in your analysis of the cost to address this critical needs analysis that you have showing us today? Also, do you have a timeline for that? And second, is there a secondary analysis being conducted for areas, suburban areas, particularly where we're looking at increasing housing stock, but need infrastructure, need sidewalks and other infrastructure improvements in order to do that in an efficient way? So wondering if you've done a secondary analysis aside from this critical needs area as well.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we could put a dollar amount to all of the need. It would be in the billions, and it would take longer than our lifetime. We can, narrow that down to a select group of projects, which is what we've attempted with the 3-year work plan. And that work plan is designed to be fundable, though the need is so much greater. We have not to date done an analysis of sort of our buildable land kind of dynamic where we can really increase the amount of housing or other activity generators, and how would the transportation network need to respond to that. However, we are undertaking a multimodal mobility master plan, which is essentially an update to the transportation component of our general plan, and that would take into account some of those land use planning considerations.
And I would just chime in slightly as well on two things. First being, these maps aren't really the end-all be-all. When it comes to our actual project map, sidewalk and bikeway, they tend to be, I'm looking at the bikeway right now, it looks a lot more diversified than just the critical needs. Obviously, those are the ones we really want to take out every opportunity we can to get safety implementation on those roads in those areas. But our actual work plan, which are also available on Walk Bike, are more spread out as far as the needs go, as far as the districts go. Second point, being regarding development. So thanks to legislation you all passed at the end of last term, we are now more equipped than ever to actually require developments to be putting in those sidewalks, be putting in those safety elements that we desperately need, especially in places like up in, North Madison and those sort of places. So today versus even 3 months ago, we have a lot more tools in our toolkit to say, if you are going to contribute to walking trips or transit trips or whatever, we're in a better place to ask them and force them to put those safety elements in as a part of their development. Again, taking the weight off of our dollars, taking the weight off of the timeline of, putting the development in and then having to come back and put the safety elements in. So it should, with new developments, is a lot easier to make those changes happen.
Thank you. And I've got Councilmember Cash next. Councilmember Cash, you're recognized.
Thank you. Hey, I appreciate all this good information. I want to ask about, since so much of this is data-driven, I want to ask about accident data, because I think there have been changes in the last couple of years about how that's collected. I think police are less likely than they were 3 to 5 years ago to report to an accident. And I know, and some of my constituents know, that there have been some areas where they have concerns, and you all look at it and it comes back saying nothing's warranted. There were no accidents. We know there were. So I guess I just want to understand how we're collecting accident data. Is it just voluntary, or are there other strategies to make sure that we've got good data on safety?
Sure. So thanks for the question. For the crash data, police reported crash data. Talking about the fatality and serious injury crashes, those are more likely to be reported because there is a fatality and serious injury, which means there would be a disruption of the traffic flow potentially. So that are more likely to be accurate. The crashes, however, such as property damage only crashes, where there is only a collision between cars, or if there is no injury was detected, however, some person went to the hospital and there was no police report made, then the crashes do not get accounted in the system. And that's why we are working towards kind of making that system as a whole by including some of the hospital crashes. Currently, we have a general database, which are primarily the police reported crashes, goes into the database the same day, and we are using that database for the time being. And in the future, we are planning on also including the data which we get from the hospitals and trying to match it with that police recorded data. And for the staff level, we have all the information there with the police reported data to be able to match with the hospital data. There are some issues with that for matching. However, there's a lot of work that's being done on a research scale to do that. So we are currently working on that.
So are you saying that if there's no injury, it's likely not being recorded, or you'd like for it to be recorded? I guess I want to understand a little bit about we're not paying attention to non-injury accidents, or I'm trying to feel that out a little better.
Sure. So when I spoke about the traditional and the Vision Zero program, the primary difference is that we do not want the fatalities and serious injuries to happen. However, every crash could have resulted in a fatality or serious injury. It could not be a property damage crash. It could be a fatality. So we do want those crashes in there. For example, if we are looking at a curve modification, any kind of intervention on the curve, we would look into the crashes where there are run-off-the-road crashes. So those could be property damage only, and we do not look at primarily just the fatality and serious injury. For that, we want the crash numbers. So we do want a good database, and that actually comes into the evaluation E of Vision Zero, is to create that database so that this program is fully data-driven, and we are working towards that.
Thanks. Do you all have like an informational piece about reporting accidents that we can share? That's something that's part of the education piece.
Yes, and that is in the pipeline, and that will be on the Vision Zero dashboard in the future. We would be creating some Vision Zero dashboard, and that will show those crashes in the so that can be an information. However, when we go to community meetings, a lot of times I tend to derive those crashes and share with the community to kind of take a look at and see the concern and where the crashes are occurring.
Thank you.
I'll just add really quickly, Gunny also mentioned the near miss analysis. So we now have technology where we have videos and we can look at an intersection before a crash happens. And other cities in Tennessee, Chattanooga, Knoxville, have used that to redesign the location before the crash occurs. There are so many locations that we hear people, concerned about safety, and it may be waiting to happen, and we can make changes in advance of that, so we're not always being reactive.
And I want to make sure to clarify, the near miss technology is in no way LPRs. I need to make that distinction up front. The near miss technology it uses LiDAR, which is if you've ever seen any the only places I've seen it really is like Teslas, where you can see how the Tesla sees stuff around it, where it's all the purple and blue, and it's just picking up objects. That's how LiDAR works. That's how these near miss cameras is a loose term, but that's what that whole grant and project is about, is not LPRs, not really even visual cameras, but more detection software to where we can see when objects, whether it's a car object or a person object, are coming really close to hitting. And that is, just wanted to make that distinction.
Thank you all. And I don't have any other members in the queue. I did have a question for our presenters. So we looked over kind of the basics of our Vision Zero plan and our walk bike plan. And I'm wondering if especially some of the new members, as they familiarize themselves with these plans, I imagine a question is going to be, well, when do we get a chance to provide input for the next update? Or if, I really think something belongs in here, but it's not in there. What would a member's best opportunity be to get that feedback over to the department of, maybe there's a new development that's happened since the last thing that's causing lots of foot traffic in an area, or just how do they best get that feedback to y'all?
So please share that feedback with us, whether or not a project is on the work plan. Maybe it's on our paving list. Maybe it's on our high injury network. Maybe it's adjacent to a school. Maybe it's a good candidate for our new tactical urbanism program. There are lots of avenues for safety and mobility improvements.
And on the note of the paving list, I will say that I have identified potential improvements with like state aid projects just by seeing it on the paving list and being like, hey guys, what's going on with this? And reaching out to staff and working together. I don't know if the paving list is still getting sent out quarterly or twice a year or whatever that is, but I would definitely encourage y'all to send that to us regularly, quarterly or however it is that y'all update it, or members to go find that paving list on the website and review it and see what is in the pipeline for your district. And if you have thoughts, if you have ideas, please reach out to these staff folks to ask questions and give feedback. I see, do you have any comments about that? Any of the presenters?
I'll just say we are trying to move towards an even slightly longer term paving list to make it even easier to plan ahead.
That's excellent. I saw Councilmember Ellis. Let me find your button. Councilmember Ellis, you're recognized.
Hey, thank you all for presenting the information. I just wanted to reemphasize, I know I met with you all in person as well, but on the information that you all bring forth, I just can't emphasize enough how crucial it is to have the breakdowns of the monies that's being spent on all of these projects broken down by district.
Thank you for that note.
All right. Any other questions, comments? We do have a regular agenda and business to get to, so I do not see any hands, and I want to thank our fabulous presenters here today for coming to join us and presenting. Everybody, I think, you know the naming convention, firstname.lastname@nashville.gov. Reach out to our staff if you need to get a hold of any of these folks, and you can't, but they're great folks to bring your concerns and questions to. So thank you all again for being here.
Most of the time, they have a lot of important work to do, so please bother me. That's what I'm here for. So I'd rather not fill up their inboxes, and I'll be the filter, and I'll make sure I get y'all's requests where they need to be. So
That's right. Mr. Purvis is our council liaison, so he is kind of the first stop at NDOT with any time I have stuff to bring to staff. So thank you, Mr. Purvis. All right, so we'll begin our regular agenda with the public comment period. We did not have anybody sign up. Is there any members of the public who came here today to the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee meeting with the intention of making a public comment? I am not seeing anyone, so we will not have anyone doing public comment this time. I have a tentative consent agenda. It might be ambitious, but we will see. I am going to read off from our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee agenda the items that I think are appropriate to consider for consent. If anything needs to come off, please just raise your hand and let me know after I go through the list once. Then I'm going to go through and read all the captions, and then we'll vote on the consent agenda, and then we'll return to any items that we did not cover with consent. So proposed consent agenda, RS 2023-88 by Webb, Porterfield, Gamble, and others. RS 2023-89 by Welsh, Porterfield, Gamble, and others. RS 2023-90 by Johnston, Sepulveda, Porterfield, and others. Item BL 2023-5 by Benedict, Rutherford, Parker. BL 2023-70 by Coupin, Evans, Huffman. BL 2023-71 by Benedict, Welsh, Porterfield, and others. BL 2023-74 by Taylor, Porterfield, Parker. BL 2023-76 by Coupin, Parker. And BL 2023-77 by Toombs and Parker. Do any of those need to come off consent? Councilmember Evans. Do you prefer Evans or Evans Siegel?
I think Evans is probably confusing, so Evans Siegel.
Evans Siegel. You got it.
Otherwise, if Aaron's here.
Gotcha. Oh, yes.
So, BL 2023-70, BL 2023-71, and BL 2023-74, please.
That was 70, 71, and 74. Thank you. Any other legislation need to be moved off of the consent agenda? Okay, well, I will read the full captions of the consent agenda here. Item 1 is RS 2023-88 by Webb, Porterfield, Gamble, and others. This approves Amendment 2 to an intergovernmental agreement between the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure for the acceptance of work in connection with the construction of a complete street project on Gallatin Pike from Altaloma Road to Liberty Lane. Item 2 is RS 2023-89 by Welsh, Porterfield, Gamble, and others. This approves a project modification to an agreement between the Metropolitan Government and the United States Department of Army to add 2 parcels related to the acquisition and removal of flood-prone properties in the Mill Creek, Sorghum Branch, and Whitmore Branch watersheds. Item 3, that's RS 2023-90 by Johnston, Sepulveda, Porterfield, and others. This approves a project modification to an agreement between the Metropolitan Government and the United States Department of Army to add 2 parcels related to the acquisition and removal of flood-prone properties in the 7 Mile Creek watersheds. Item 4 is BL 2023-5 by Benedict, Rutherford, and Parker. This amends the Geographic Information System street and alley centerline layer for the Metropolitan Government by renaming Due West Avenue between Gallatin Pike and Fernbake Drive to Montague Way. Item 9, BL 2023-76 by Coupin and Parker. This authorizes Newco Arc LLC to construct and install underground encroachments at 223 4th Avenue North. Item 10 is BL 2023-77 by Toombs and Parker. This amends the Geographic Information System street and alley center line layer for the Metropolitan Government by abandoning a portion of right-of-way and easements of existing Lemuel Road at the intersection of Dickerson Pike and Lemuel Road after the completion of the realignment of that Lemuel Road at that intersection. I apologize for getting that wrong a number of times. So with that, does anything need to be moved off of the consent agenda now that you've heard the full captions? Not hearing any, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, we approve the consent agenda unanimously. First item, this is number 5 on the Transportation and Infrastructure agenda. This is BL 2023-70 by Coupin, Evans, and Huffman. This amends section 13.08.040 of the Metropolitan Code related to the offering of merchandise for sale on or near public property. We will go to committee member and lead sponsor, Councilmember Coupin. Councilmember Coupin, you're recognized.
Can I ask a point of order?
Sure.
Procedure question. If I would like to refer to the council legal to explain a section of the bill, do I move it first and then ask?
You would move it for purposes of discussion, and then you could ask for an explanation from legal. Yes, sir.
Perfect. So I would like to move the bill.
All right, moved and seconded. You're recognized.
So then can I then ask for the clarification question?
Yes, you may.
So a question came up about this bill is targeting downtown Nashville. There are individuals that are putting snakes around their neck and then putting them on individuals down there and then fairly aggressively soliciting tips. And so this was a amendment to the existing countywide vending ordinance to address that. There was a question about the word services and how that might apply to different types of workers, and I believe sex workers and things like that was brought up. So can I ask Hannah to weigh in on that? Or Margaret, sorry.
Let me get the button here. I think you're recognized.
Well, as it might apply to sex workers, I would think it would, as a service, potentially, yes, but that's probably already illegal and, prohibited pursuant to criminal statutes.
Thank you.
So we've got a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion, question? I see Councilmember Evans Siegel.
I just want to clarify, I think my concern is that we've worked really hard to make sure that certain sex workers and other vulnerable people are not criminalized, and that we have treated them as victims when necessary, and creating additional pathways in which they could be harassed, or the word service could be expanded in ways that also could potentially get into First Amendment protections, and people, holding up signs for, say, come see me, I'm an accountant, I'll help you with your taxes, or come see this lawyer or this notary. And it seems that the word services is quite broad, so I'm just trying to figure out how it's defined and how we're limiting it if we're going to expand pathways to potentially go after folks who maybe aren't necessarily holding pythons, but are just engaging in fairly normal standard behavior, or behavior we have tried not to criminalize in certain ways, or at least not prosecute.
Can you give us an explanation of?
I think I could maybe expand on that a little bit. I don't think that it's the intent, and I don't think it reaches services. You mentioned CPA, so if you were to put out, a sandwich board in front of your office that you are providing CPA services, come on inside and do that. I don't think that it applies to that. If you were setting up a stand on the public right of way or in the public way offering your CPA services, then yeah, it would apply to that.
I'm still fairly uncomfortable with the broad use of the term services when it seems like going after one particular type of activity. And, I guess a question would be, would it be appropriate to move to defer this to the next meeting so that we can have time to look at a possible amendment where we narrow what we mean by services, so we make sure that we are discussing what we're actually trying to solve and not just writing a broad law for the sake of ease.
I will go to the maker of the motion and the sponsor of the bill, Councilmember Coopin.
I think it's a great question that's raised. If we remove the word services, does the bill still maintain its initial intent of banning the activity in question?
For our legal counsel.
It might. I would need to look at it a little bit further to see if it actually does or not.
I guess, are we going to do that research here and now, or? We could move it to the heel, or if someone were to make a motion to defer, I mean, I might want to hear if there's any, is there like a snake convention coming to town or something that?
They're already here. They're already here. If we move it to the heel to see if that's enough time, can we do that and then circle back to it?
Yeah, we'll move it to the heel with no objections. Okay, we've moved that item to the heel. And again, that is BL 2023-70. Make note of that so I don't forget it. All right, so next item that was not on the consent agenda is item 6. This is BL 2023-71 by Benedict Welsh Porterfield and others. This amends section 13.08.080 of the Metropolitan Code related to the placement and removal of license plate readers and related signage. Do we have a motion on this? Moved and seconded. We'll go to the bill's sponsor and committee member, Emily Benedict. Councilmember Benedict, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So this bill requires that license plate reader technology and equipment be removed at the end of any pilot period by any department within 15 days. It allows that the equipment and signage only be installed if we have authorized use during an effective agreement or during a pilot program. And it doesn't impact any planned implementation of the LPR program that was outlined or that is outlined in the current code, but rather it helps define when and how equipment can be caused to or shall be caused to be placed or removed. So, I mean, I certainly have plenty to say about this, but I think there was a question from a committee member, so I'll just, that's the intent of the bill. That's what the bill does.
All right, any questions or discussion? I see Councilmember Evan Siegel, Councilmember Ellis. We'll go to Councilmember Evan Siegel first. You're recognized.
I appreciate my colleague bringing this to our attention and bringing this important conversation up. My question is sort of practically, where are we on this? I know there were some news stories about some of it being brought down as well recently, and just wanted an update so that we know where we are and what this will cover.
Do we have anybody here from MNPD or the administration who can, or it looks like Mr. Purvis from NDOT has approached the public podium, and Mr. Purvis, you're recognized.
We could just speak towards the signage, which we removed the signage back in October. So no more signs. I can't speak towards the cameras or not, but
thank you.
Our portion of it.
Thank you. I see someone from MNPD approaching the podium. Thank you for joining us. If you would just please introduce yourself with your name and share any information you'd like with us.
Happy to. Lower that a little bit. I'm Captain Kelly Cantrell, and to my knowledge, or the last information I was given, was that all of the equipment has been taken down.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Ellis, you are recognized.
Yeah, so just piggybacking off of Councilmember Evan Siegel, I'd met with two of the police commanders out in Hermitage and the other out in the South Precinct. And they were saying that the cameras have already been removed and the signage removed. And so I was surprised that this item is even still on the agenda if that is true. If it's not, I would do a motion to defer until we can get clarity.
Is that a motion or is that a?
Chair, may I explain what?
Okay, so
Yeah, if my statement is not true, that is a motion to defer.
I have to either have a motion or not. I can't make a determination as to. So
Okay, well,
can I go to the?
get my question answered first?
Yeah, would you like me to go to the sponsor or?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go back to sponsor Emily, Councilmember Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. Great question. And this is something that definitely, the intent originally was back in August, the last council meeting of the last term. I asked the Chief Gilder, were the cameras still up? And at that time, he said that he believes that the vendor could take them down at any time. They have now been removed as of, I believe it was October 29th or 30th, right in there. The bill still is up because this is actually for any department, for any pilot. This is not specific to MNPD. The most recent pilot that we've had was for MNPD. However, the language and the ordinance that is in the code today is applicable to any department. So for instance, down the pike, maybe Park Police wants to have an LPR pilot. That LPR program will follow the code as is written here. So the goal here is to make sure that the equipment is only up while we're in either a pilot or an effective legal agreement.
Councilmember Ellis, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I want a motion to defer it. I want to talk to MNPD again.
Okay, sure. So then we've got a motion to defer. Any discussion on a motion to defer?
Sure.
I've got the lead sponsor, Councilmember Benedict. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I would suggest that instead of deferring in this committee, that MNPD will be in the Public Safety Committee tomorrow. This bill is on the Public Safety Committee agenda, and that would be the most appropriate place for MNPD to be there and discuss the bill. So I would speak, I'm speaking against the deferral in this committee. This committee really is more focused on the NDOT function or portion of the bill. And so the public safety side, I would recommend that we look at that in that committee, and a deferral motion would be more appropriate there. So with that, I'd ask my colleagues to vote against a deferral.
Any other discussion on the deferral motion? All right, let's vote on the deferral motion. All those in favor? Seeing two. Any opposed? 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. I got 2 to 8, I think. Well, deferral motion fails. 2 to 8. All right, we are back on the bill. I've got two people in the queue. I've got Councilmember Horton. Councilmember Horton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'd echo Councilmember Benedict's sentiment that this is not only relevant for other departments in addition to MNPD, it could be relevant for MNPD in the future as well. If we ever change vendors, it'll ensure that the license plate readers and related signage are removed in a timely manner. Thank you.
And then lastly, I've got Councilmember Cash. Cash in the queue. Give me 1 second to find you, sir. You are recognized.
Thanks. What I was going to say or ask has really already been answered. I kind of wanted to ask or point out that what Councilmember Benedict is proposing is not just a one-time deal, so that what may be happening with one set of LPRs doesn't necessarily change the intent of our bill. I'm glad that we're not deferring it in committee. I think that there can be a good discussion in public safety tomorrow, and if we need to discuss it more on the floor, I'm up for that.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions related to this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please, let's go with hands. Please raise your hands. That's unanimous, I believe. Is there anyone opposed or anyone not voting? Thank you. All right. Next is BL 2023-74. This is by Taylor Porterfield Parker. This approves amendment number 2 to a contract between the Metropolitan Government and KCI Technologies Incorporated for Jefferson Street intersection improvements. Do we have a motion on this? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions from members? Councilmember Evan Siegel.
I think it is recommended that this be deferred for 2 meetings because it will likely need an amendment. So I would move to defer it for 2 meetings.
Thank you. Where did that recommendation come from, may I ask?
Legal counsel.
Legal counsel. Fantastic. Excellent. Would you like to move? Did you move 2 meetings? Okay, so we have a 2-meeting deferral on the floor. Seconded. Any discussion about a 2-meeting deferral? I seeing none. All those in favor of a 2-meeting deferral, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right. Unanimously recommend the 2-meeting deferral. All right, next we have BL 2023-75 by Councilmember Coupin. This renames the Kelly Miller Smith Memorial Bridge on Jefferson Street as the Reverend Kelly M. Smith Memorial Bridge. Councilmember Coupin, you are recognized.
I would like to move it with a substitute.
All right, so the bill's moved and the substitute is moved. Any discussion, questions, concerns about this? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, thank you, Councilmember Coupin. We recommend your substitute, and can we count that as the bill as substituted, or do I need to do a separate for that? All right, well, now we have the substituted version before us. Let's consider that as well. All those in favor of the substituted version? Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, thank you. All right, now we will return to BL 2023-70. This is Councilmember Coupin's bill. Do we need another motion, or can we just return to the motion that was on the floor? Which was that a deferral or a? Okay, well then we have a. Okay, I think just for, I think we'll have time to do that. Let's, if we could just go to the lead sponsor and then hear from council, and then we can make any additional motions if that's all right. Okay, so we'll go to the sponsor, Councilmember Coupin.
So I'd like to move for approval.
Thank you. And I believe we were hoping to have some information from legal counsel.
If memory serves, the question was whether or not it would remain the same if services was removed.
Correct. So if we remove the word services and just have the part that says prohibits display of animals for gratuity or payment, does that close that loophole?
I think that it would close the loophole, but I do think that in order to do that, you would need to file an amendment.
Okay, so I'd have to file an amendment for the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Or you could file a late filed amendment for tomorrow night. And then you would have to suspend the rules and go to Rules Committee.
Okay, and if I wanted to do that, I would just get with,
Yes.
I'll do that.
Council office, yes.
Okay, so can I move to defer it to have the amendment late filed? I guess I don't need that second part.
You would not need the second part.
Okay, so then I would move to defer it so I can make changes.
Sorry to have the back and forth, but if you move to defer, it's going to move it to the November 21st meeting, and that gives you plenty of time to file an amendment without it being late filed. If you don't move to defer, yet you want to file an amendment for tomorrow, it would be a late filed amendment, and you would need to then also move to suspend the rules, and you would also need to go to the Rules Committee to be heard.
So since this is a timely manner and there are currently issues downtown that MMPD has asked us to handle, I would move to approve it stating that I would also late file the amendment to adjust the services language.
All right, we've got a motion with a promise attached to it. So it's
A motion and a promise.
It's a motion to approve. So I see Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Allen, you are recognized.
This is on the deferral, I think, if there was one.
There-
Or on the thought about deferring. I have a little bit of concern about, I mean, the word services, I believe, has been in here all along. What's changed is the reference to the animals, if I've marked my copy up correctly. And so I would be interested in knowing the history of why services was in there in the first place, and if we're throwing out something that we wanted to have there that's not necessarily, am I incorrect about that? So we're adding both services and the reference to animals, so that's a new word. Okay, then I'll withdraw my concern.
Councilmember Evans Siegel.
As much as I appreciate my colleague's word and trust my colleague, I think services is still an undefined term in this legislation. It seems unnecessary to the problem that we're trying to solve, and creating additional civil fines and pathways for people to engage in heated interactions with folks does seem unnecessary if we're trying to solve a very narrow problem. So I would move that we defer this one meeting while we clean it up.
Do we have a second on that motion? All right, so deferral has been moved and properly seconded. Do we have any discussion, questions, concerns on the deferral motion? Councilmember Cash, you are recognized.
So I understand correctly, this is not amendable on third, right?
It is not amendable on third.
If we don't pass a deferral in committee, then for some reason, the proposed amendment does not make it through on late file, we are still able to defer in the full council, correct?
Yes.
That's correct. I saw Evan Siegel. Councilmember Evan Siegel.
I would just note that while MNPD may believe that this is an issue that needs an immediate solution, if you're putting an animal in somebody's face and touching them and demanding money, there are currently ways to enforce that. And that would be, I'm not allowed to touch people without permission. That is a criminal and prohibited activity. And therefore, we should not let a suggestion that something should be done quickly make us move without thinking through it and getting it right the first time.
Okay, Councilmember Coopin.
So I appreciate the comments, my colleagues, and I would tend to agree that I don't want to rush it. I think my intention would be to get a late filed amendment through that removes the word services. And to Councilmember Cash's point, if that doesn't make it in, there's an opportunity on the floor to defer the bill there. So I would look to do it that way since we've been working on it, but understand either way.
I can editorialize a little bit here. I don't know what is the appropriate role as the chair, but I think that in cases like these, when concerns are raised and something is maybe not super urgent or timely, obviously this is an issue. It's been brought to council members and they're concerned and they're trying to address it. But at varying times, the Rules Committee has been very stringent, not stringent at all, about whether a late filed thing really needed to have a timely or emergency type justification. And I tend to err on it does need to be kind of an emergency situation, but I guess we'll go to the will of the committee on this deferral motion. So we're on a deferral motion, correct? All right, so all those in favor of a one meeting deferral on this legislation, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, any not voting? Okay, so I'm seeing, how many are in attendance? So I'm saying 10 in favor, 1 against, to 1 meeting deferral. Okay. I believe that is our business. I had a few things that I wanted to share with folks, but I can save those for the next meeting because we are bumping up against the next meeting. I do want to remind everyone that if you haven't completed your required utility training, the water folks have set up, I believe it's March 16th and 28th. March 16th, I think, is a Saturday, and the 28th is a Thursday. It's like a full day training. It's really cool. Our water department does some really, really cool stuff on a really, really large scale. And so both new members and returning members have a requirement to do this utility training. There's different options, but the water day is a really cool one that you can do. So if you're interested in doing that on March 16th or 28th, please reach out to Sonia Allman at the water department, and she can let you know if there's slots still available. When I checked with her today, there were still slots available for March 16th and March 28th. So please look into that if you haven't done your training yet. And thanks, everybody. That concludes our meeting.